From KPFK in Los Angeles, California, Valley Free Radio in Florence, and WMBR in Cambridge, Massachusetts, WNUC in Detroit, and BikeTalk.org worldwide, this is Bike Talk.
Bike Talk.
Welcome to Bike Talk. I'm Taylor Nichols.
And I'm Nick Richard.
Hey, Nick.
Hey.
Thanksgiving is over and the holidays have begun. And I got to tell you, I always like Thanksgiving because it's a great time to ride the bike. You know what I mean? Whether you eat too much or something like that, the weather is usually pretty good, hopefully, and you get out there on the bike.
Isn't that the thing about biking a lot, is that you can eat all you want?
That's why I bike.
Is that part of your reason?
I don't know that it's my reason, but it certainly is a wonderful benefit because I do like eating.
And I bet you don't think too much about it.
I don't. I eat whatever and whenever, which is probably not good, but
that sounds good to me.
Oh, well. You know, the other thing about the holidays is this is a great time to go to our website and go to our bookshop on our website, biketalk.org, and look at some of the books that we have for stocking stuffers for the bike nerd in your life, or maybe even for yourself. You know, a couple of them we've talked about recently on the show, and I wanted to just name some of the few that are right on top of the list. You know, Biking Uphill in the Rain.
Tom Fucaloro.
Exactly, from Seattle. And we recently talked about Pedal Pusher, Mary Boone's book about the first woman to ever ride her bike around the world in 1895.
Annie Londonderry.
Right. And that's a great children's book. Kids will love that book.
Oh, it's such a good book. Inspiring. Yeah.
We also have Women Changing Cities, which is the book by Chris and Melissa Bruntlett about how women are leading cities and they're really leading the charge for better bike infrastructure. And, you know, you did the panel last week about the Seattle mayor.
Katie Wilson, definitely a woman changing a city.
And there's also Love Letter to Suburbia, which is Diana Lisa's book about trying to build a village where you can walk and bike and not be in car-dominated, you know, suburban life.
4 of the 5 books you just mentioned were by women. And we're going to have another book right now edited and published by women. But we've also had Charles Marone and Wes Marshall and Peter Norton and Ben Goldfarb and Jesse Singer and Donald Shoup.
Right, Donald Shoup.
And they're all on
Nolan Gray's book, Arbitrary Lines, about zoning. A lot of great books out there.
What's the one, The History and the Mystery?
Two Wheels Good, The History and Mystery of the Bicycle.
Jody Rosen,
very good.
All these people we've had on, all the way back from Pedaling Revolution.
Right.
Out there.
Which is one of the first books I read that really got me going in the whole urbanism bicycle world. There's also, Nick, When Driving is Not an Option by Anna Zevarts.
So many good books by people we've talked to on the show. But this one is a Halloween book, actually. We've been holding it since Halloween by Microcosm Publishing. Elly Blue is the series editor. We've had many times, and Elly did Bikeonomics, and their new one is Fantastical science fiction bike stories. This is What Rides at Night, and Elly did the interview.
Hi everyone, I'm Elly Blue with Microcosm Publishing. I've been editing a series of books called Bikes in Space, Feminist, Bicycle, Science Fiction, and Fantasy anthologies for over a decade now. And I have with me Summer Jewel Keown, who is the editor of the most recent one of these to come out, What Rides at Night. And the theme is queer Halloween short stories that are fantastical and that are about bicycling. Hi, Summer. Do you want to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about how you came to be the editor of a Bikes in Space book?
Of course. As you mentioned, it's the most niche, queer feminist, science fiction and fantasy stories with bicycles and Halloween. I love it. So I learned about the Bikes in Space books with the 3rd volume that was about zombies. So it's a perfect cycle back around to spooky things. I might have supported the Kickstarter for that one. You know, I started reading them, and then there was a call for submissions for one. I submitted my story, and I've had ones in a couple others since then, and they've all had different themes.
That's so awesome. And you're a writer, like you come to this already with a long writing and publication history. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So I write speculative short stories mostly. under my own name, Summer Jewel Keown, and I've also got a couple smushy romance novels under the name Sophie Karen.
Awesome. So let's see, we started publishing these books, the Bikes in Space book. The first one was a zine. I had a zine series called Taking the Lane. And I want to say that in like 2012 or 2013, I was like, I know, the next one will be science fiction stories. And all of the contributions to previous issues had been essays and things. And I had so much fun doing it. I was like, this is my dream. And went from there and basically have done one per year. Suitably enough, this is the 13th one, a very lucky number in this series. I think we were going to have 13 stories, but I think we ended up with 14 because Summer was such a diligent editor and wrote one story of her own. Can you talk a little bit about the process of like putting the book together and like how you chose the stories and how did that all come together?
So after you and I, chatted and figured out how niche we could possibly make this and chose the best niche, we put out a call for stories. And I also reached out to Elly Bangs, who I love and has had some stories in this series before, to see if she would be interested in sending one also. And she did, and it's amazing. But we got such a great variety of stories. Some of them were on the scary and spooky side. Some were more quirky. It's a really great mix that came in. And we even have one comic in here as well.
Do you have a favorite story or one that you want to like call out to the audience or even read a few lines from?
So of course I can't pick a favorite. One I really love though, it's called Rebel Dispatch by Mildred Locke. And I love it because it's a group of friends who happen to be zombies. It's in this almost apocalyptic Portland, like recent semi-apocalyptic, and they're really, really tired of them and all the monsters basically getting pushed aside and having to live in the shadows. And so they put together a zine that they start distributing to get all the monsters to come together and figure out how they're going to fight back. I just love that it brings together so many different elements. And I love the idea of getting this old printing press and zombies saying, yeah, zines are the way, and just dropping them off at haunted houses to get the ghosts involved. And of course, like one of the characters is not so sure if they really want to fight. And so there's a lot of conflict that goes along with that and what's going to happen. But it's really cool to see, the community building amongst werewolves and zombies and all of the different creatures.
This feels like such a valuable lesson for our times, really. It's like you might be different species of monster, but you can still work together.
It is pretty timely.
And so do they ride bikes to do the zine distribution?
Yes, absolutely. There's bikes all over this story. How else would zombies get around?
I know. Well, I don't think you can get a driver's license if you're dead. At least you're not supposed to be.
There probably are rules against that.
Yeah. Sorry, zombies. Join us on the bike side. What is your history about bicycling that brought you to this very niche interest that involves bikes as well as so many other things?
I've always really supported local bike activism. I worked for a little while for a local bike organization in Indiana and got to help with some bike education and policy and things like that. And I have to tell you, Elly, when they found out I had a story in one of your books, the board and volunteers thought I was so cool. So thank you for that.
Glad to help. It's a good resume builder there.
Absolutely. They were like, wait, Elly Blue, who writes about bike everything? That's right.
Everything. Well, now now you're the tastemaker about queer Halloween bicycle stories, so watch out.
I'm sure that all of the queer Halloween bicycle publications are going to be asking me for interviews because of this.
Well, they should be. One of my goals with this, honestly, is because you can't accept every story, unfortunately. And believe it or not, we do get enough stories that fit this specific niche that we have to turn some down. My dream has always been that people will sort of take those stories and place them in other publications, and that will spread the feminist bicycle, sci-fi, and fantasy genre in that manner. I've seen it happen a couple times, and I'm always really delighted for them, because often when we have to reject a story, it's still a really good story. We just have two that are really similar or something. Or it's a little too long or a little too horror or something like that. We had one really good one once that was straight up erotica, and I was like, damn, this is a good story, and not for this volume. We've got people buying this for their 12-year-old kids. So
right.
Well, can you tell us, are there any creative projects that you're working on right now or that you have coming up that you're excited about that you want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, I have a story coming out in Lunar Station Quarterly that I think is coming out in December. And then I've been also working on a book that's a novella and with some additional short stories that's all about witches. I'll make sure there's some bicycles in there too.
Oh,
So
please. Thank you.
now I feel like I have to have bicycles in everything. Not that they wouldn't have been there before, but it's just one of those things that you check. You're like, check for typos and bicycles.
Yep. This is how we destroy the petropatriarchy, with careful editorial checklists that include bicycles. You've got a copy of What Rides at Night and you've read it and you're waiting for the next one. It is going to come out next summer, in summer of 2026. It is going to be called Stellar Bike Ability. It's all feminist science fiction and fantasy short stories by and about disabled people riding bikes or being bike adjacent in some way. And it's edited by Jennifer Lee Rossman, who's another longtime contributor to the series as an author and is now editing this volume.
What are you working on?
Oh, what am I working on? Oof.
Yeah.
Well, when I first started doing these books, I had my own little publishing company. It was all feminist bike stuff. It all kind of fit together. And now I'm at Microcosm and I'm like trying to run this whole company with all these different lines. It's just keeping track of all the day-to-day with that is a little nuts. But the creative project I'm most excited about is my partner, Joe Beal, and I decided we wanted to make zines in our spare time when we're not working, selling zines and books. So we've been spending a lot of our time on the weekends writing zines, and it's actually really fun because a lot of the work I do at work is not creative anymore. And so it's nice to just sit and write. And their most recent one is called A People's Guide to Santa Claus. We did a lot of research about Santa Claus and Christmas traditions, and there's some gruesome, grisly, ghastly, weird stuff in there. That was super fun. Better than science fiction.
Is that out now?
It's out now as a zine, and then we're going to add to it as a book. So if you have any like weird Christmas traditions that you know of or you want us to get to the bottom of, you should contact us. And the way to do that is go to microcosmpublishing.com. If you go to microcosm.pub/bikes-and-space, you can find What Rides at Night edited by Summer Jewel Keown and all the other Bikes and Space books. And you can find a lot of other books there as well. I'm not going to lie, you might be overwhelmed at that website, but come on over and be overwhelmed with us. Summer, do you have any parting words of wisdom for our listeners and readers?
Ooh, wisdom. Just go out and ride your bike. That's all I got.
It's so simple. Thank you so much for joining me. This has really been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Elly.
All of those books are available on our bookshop site at biketalk.org. And you get a little bit of a discount and we get a little bit of the finances also. So it's a win-win purchase, not only for us and for you, but for the person that you give the book to.
This next interview is from you, right, Taylor?
Yeah, this is Rebecca Riley of Queen City Couriers, and it's a bicycle messenger outfit in Buffalo, New York. We like to support bike entrepreneurs whenever we can. We had Satellite Cafe, the little coffee cargo bike unit in Los Angeles, California. And of course, Rio Ramsey out of Detroit has a pedicab business. Well, the next bike entrepreneur we're going to introduce you to is Rebecca Riley. And Rebecca is the head of operations of an organization called Queen City Couriers. And they deliver everything from, as they say, food to fridges. Rebecca Riley, welcome to Bike Talk.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. We first became aware of you when you wrote the email that still makes me laugh. That said, please, please, please pronounce Ontario correctly, because one of us, I won't say which one it was, maybe it was Nick, kept saying Ontario, and we had a good laugh about that. So thanks for writing that email and introducing yourself to us. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about Queen City Couriers. You're in Buffalo, New York, correct?
That's right. Well, I was a courier for many years, and I worked in cities all over the United States. And some fellas wanted to start a courier company in Buffalo, so they wanted to pick my brain about how things work and how they could start a company. And they did start a delivery here, a delivery there.
Right.
And I thought during COVID, I was working at a not-for-profit at the time, and I got an email from another not-for-profit and they were talking about delivering food to people that were shut in, but they're,
Right.
they didn't have the means to like have anyone bring food to them.
Right.
And I said, well, do you know how to do that? And they were like, no, actually, we don't, but you do. They knew me. And so I took it to the guys and we decided to deliver food for people for COVID. And it was very popular. We got a lot of clients, so many clients that we just didn't have enough couriers to run the food around. And we moved about 2 tons worth of food on bikes
Wow.
to every corner of the city. So that was
Wow.
pretty cool. And
Sure
it kind of
is.
launched us.
And are you
So,
using cargo bikes or regular bikes or all kinds of bikes or what?
well, at the time I had just gotten 8-foot long bikes at work trailer.
Sure.
And we put, those Home Depot bins on the trailer. I would go out before my job, my actual job, and I would go shopping for the food and get about 500 pounds worth of food. And I would take it to our hub, which was one of our clients. We kind of worked a deal where we'd put all the food in the hub and then our couriers would come and pack a bag and take
Right.
it out.
Right. How
And
many
then I would,
couriers do you have?
well, at that time we had about 20.
Wow.
Um, Now we're kind of on a shoestring right now because I don't know, just the whole market's been insane.
Right.
So we haven't had a whole lot of work.
Right. And let me ask you, how do you take something big like a fridge on bikes?
Actually, it's empty, so it's not that heavy. It's awkward. It's definitely awkward. I mean, it's not something you can pick up on your own. I would winch it on and then strap it down on a
Sure.
trailer. And
Wow.
it was pretty fun. No, it's something you can't not see.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that that just opens everybody's mind about what is possible on a bike. We've been talking lately about all the amazing things that people do on bikes anyways. And so
Right.
moving fridges is just added to the list.
Right, right. I took a piano once.
No
That was pretty
way.
fun. Yeah.
Wow. That's something out of a silent movie.
Yeah.
Well, you
I
are
don't
a
know. I just
former Marine also, correct?
that's correct.
And where does the name Queen City come from? Is Buffalo the Queen City? I wasn't aware of
Yeah.
that.
Yes, it is. It's known as the Queen City. Well, to us at least. It's a moniker for Buffalo
Oh, okay.
specifically.
Okay. And what do you do in the wintertime? Because Buffalo is kind of famous for having pretty tough winters.
Well, when we're born here in Buffalo, you get an antifreeze shot. You know, they hold you
In your
upside
blood?
down, smack your butt,
Right.
and put some antifreeze in there. If you grow up in Buffalo, you learn how to penguin walk from 2 years old. You learn about ice. I could tell you things about snow and ice, the depths of, like Eskimo type understanding of
Right.
snow, ice, and cold. So there's a lot of people that actually just ride all winter. On my couriers, I wouldn't bring them on if they didn't ride in the winter,
Sure.
if they couldn't fix their bikes. I'm like, I rode in New York City and they get snow, not a
Yeah.
lot. Kind of
Yeah.
known for being able to just deal with it.
Yeah, sure. Well, we were set to talk a couple of weeks ago, but you weren't available to talk because you went to a memorial in Washington, D.C. for a friend and a comrade. I wonder if you could sort of explain who it was and what it was and why it was so important.
Well, she was also a bike courier. Her name was Lisa Martin. And couriers, DC is actually my first courier city, and we have our own culture. And like, for instance, this week is the Sydney World Championships, and I've been talking to guys from around the world that are going there now. It's we consider any event to be kind of almost like a family reunion, even a
Right.
party or a race. It's all, partly it's about the race, but
Sure.
mostly it's about the community.
Sure.
And so she and I rode together amongst a lot of other people in the high times, the 90s, when there were about 400 or 500 couriers on the road at the time.
Right.
Everyone knew her. And she was on a training ride with a friend in the suburbs of Washington, D.C., like around Hyattsville. And somebody hit her and killed her. Which we all find it really ironic because in our friend group, the picture I have on my Zoom, as a matter of fact, that guy, he was also run over by a car. and he was part of our friend group. And these were two of the most safe and, least obnoxious riders you'd ever meet.
Sure.
They're the ones that stop at the stop signs. We thought they
Right.
were ridiculous.
Right.
We're just like, wow, there's nobody
Right.
here. Like,
Right.
and we're all looking at each other like, why them?
Right.
And to me, I'm beyond sad. Of course, I'm sad. I miss my friend, and I'm really devastated for her husband that she left behind and her children, who, I mean, I just cannot imagine somebody losing their mother.
Right.
The one is still in high school.
Wow. You said a lot of messengers and carriers from around the area showed up for the memorial for Lisa.
Yes, yes. That's
Right.
what we do as
Right.
couriers.
Right.
In the messenger world, it's truly meritorious. Pete Hegseth can't tell me I can't do what the men do. I've shown men. I've shown them what I can do. And
Right.
those guys in the bike messenger community will stand up to anybody and say, no, women can do this job. In fact, there's
Right.
women like Rebecca. She's right up there with the top men.
Right.
So, I never felt that sort of camaraderie with Marines. Every time I changed the duty station, I'd have to go right back to zero again.
Right.
But with the bike messenger community, I would show up. I didn't know anybody in New York City. And I rode down the street and somebody screamed my name because they
Right.
knew me from an event somewhere else. And that's amazing. So whenever a courier dies, we have a thing called a RIP ride. It's a rest in peace ride. And usually the couriers ride all over the city and, pour
Right.
one out.
Well, we are always talking about how much do we talk about the road violence, and we really like to focus on the positive if we can, but we know that the reason that more people don't ride is because they don't feel safe, and they don't feel
Right.
safe because the infrastructure is not there to protect them. So I'm glad that you were able to come on and talk a little bit about
Yeah.
Lisa. How do people find Queen City Couriers, and how can they find out about the company?
It's queencitycouriers.com.
That's pretty easy.
It's pretty simple. No, I'm sorry. It's qcccouriers.com.
Okay.
I would like to say something on that, trying to keep it positive. I personally cannot understand why car drivers have such a hard time driving their cars. It is really easy. It is
Yeah.
so unbelievably easy. And, I have the time and I look in people's cars. I've looked in people's cars for decades because I'm trying to figure out, why is the driving so hard? Why do they keep killing people? Why do they keep killing my friends? And what I see in there is people putting their makeup on, reading their phone, reading a book, just anything but driving the car.
Right.
They speed when they don't need to speed. They look at things that don't matter. They're driving, their focus of their attention is on something that it's not going to hurt them. They're not going to hurt it. And then they miss the important things.
Right.
So they venture out into the intersection, staring at somebody who's picking their nose on the side of the sidewalk.
Right. Right.
That person's not doing anything.
Right.
And there's a truck coming, or
Yeah.
there's sirens coming.
Yeah.
And, I think that there's an attitude problem. I worked putting in infrastructure. I worked in bike advocacy, and I used to paint bike lanes. And it's amazing, what you say is true. Even putting that paint down, most drivers respond to it in a positive way. But I have ridden my bike in some pretty crazy cities all over the world, like in Seoul, in Tokyo, Jakarta. These are not
Wow.
easy cities to ride in.
Right.
And I have never encountered the kind of selfish and entitled attitude that you get from the drivers here in the United States, except maybe England. But I seriously believe, because Netherlands, Germany, France, it's the driver's fault if they hit a bike,
Right.
period. There's
Right.
no discussion. That's the law. And they behave accordingly. And I think that we are not punitive enough with, I hate to say this, I really hate to even say this out loud, but if you really want to kill somebody, the best way to do it is with a car, because
Right.
you will probably get away with it. I think that, we do need infrastructure. I agree, because people do not feel safe, and I don't blame them. They're not all salty like me. But I think that there needs to be a discussion about people's attitudes in cars.
Right. Well, that's a good point. And I think that brings up what we've been talking about on the show recently is it personal responsibility and or is it the system that the cars are in, with these long, straight, wide, easy to drive on roads where if you're drunk or on your phone, you can still maneuver this, 3-ton vehicle through the streets and put everyone else at danger. Um, Rebecca Riley, thank you so much for reaching out to us and correcting the pronunciation of Ontario. Thank you for all the work that you've done in Buffalo. And thanks for coming on Bike Talk.
Thanks, Taylor.
It seems in Rebecca's telling that being a courier is as tough or tougher than being a Marine. So I think we got some news from Charlie, right?
Yes, we do.
Hey, it's Charlie here with the week's news. From Streets Blog NYC, 2 frontrunners for New York City Council Speaker have received more than $250,000 from Uber's NY-PAC. The funding raises questions about the integrity of the candidate's potential future decisions in the highly influential role. Friend of the show, Melissa Bruntlett, was featured in the New York Times International edition. The headline reads, "She's on a mission to make the world more bike-friendly." Melissa Bruntlett advocates equitable, inclusive, and sustainable mobility, and writes about other women who do too. You can find a version of the article on the New York Times website. From Seattle's NPR station KUOW, livable Kirkland and Eastside urbanism chipped in to buy a bike lane sweeper for the city of Kirkland to the east of Seattle. Similar to the one in LA that we recently covered, this sweeper is pulled by a bike, and those volunteers who do the sweeping don't need to wait around for the city to make it happen. From Streets Blog Chicago, the annual Chicago Traffic Crashes Report recently came out, and it has some good news. From 2021 to 2024, there was an 18.5% drop in people killed or seriously injured by traffic violence. In certain parts of Chicago, there were even greater drops. However, Nick Hunter of Chicago Bike Grid Now has pointed out that crashes involving bicycles have only been on the rise in recent years, including a 49% increase from 2022 through November to 2025 through November. From Billy Penn at WHYY, Philadelphia has just come out with their Vision Zero action plan. Almost 3,000 Philadelphians weighed in on the plan, which outlines a path to eliminating traffic fatalities and injuries. Also included in the report, traffic-related injuries fell 18% in 2024. Just like in Chicago, however, local advocates are skeptical. Jesse Amadio of Philly Bike Action said the plans are not substantial enough to improve things as much as the city hopes they will.
Nick, in other news, I keep reading in the paper down in Hermosa Beach, there was an attack, a really awful attack. But the paper listed it as e-biking teens accused of violent attack. And I don't know if you remember, you and I talked a little bit about a similar kind of incident that happened in Los Angeles. And the headline there was "Group of Teen Bicyclists Seen Beating Person." That was the LA Times. And it just made me think, and this is something you always say, actually. It just made me think, they never say person driving car robbed bank.
True. Yeah. Sometimes they just say like car robbed bank.
But it made me think, is there a media bias against bikes? And then remember last week when we had Armin Sammy, the founder and creator of Dashcam, he said when he got in that incident with a car that he felt there was a police bias against bicycles. So I thought we should bring in our lawyer, Jim Pocrass of Pocrass and De Los Reyes, and see what he thinks about the legal aspects of possibly a media bias or a police bias. Jim Pocrass, as always, welcome back to Bike Talk.
Well, thank you for having me back here again. And I'm more than happy to talk about, this subject. I've been a lawyer for doing bicycle law for over 25 years, just really specializing in bicycle accident law. And one thing never changes. When cyclists are hit or involved in some type of a crash, the first assumption by the police and the media is that the cyclist must have done something wrong. Okay, and why are we talking about this? Because most police officers receive no training in bicycle-specific laws. I've been meeting with the police in Los Angeles and with the California Highway Patrol, the LAPD, the Santa Monica Police Department, West Hollywood, and I meet with them like once a month. I'm always asking them the question is, why is it that you always find, that the cyclist did something wrong? And what I find is that the police really don't know bicycle law. They know vehicle law, but they don't know bicycle law. And so they just don't know what the law is with regard to what bikes can and can't do. So let me give you a couple examples of, what I've found are the most common biases. One of my cases that I had a police report which found the cyclist responsible for wearing dark clothes, and that found them in violation of a vehicle code, which is a basic speed law that they're supposed to ride at a speed that's safe. Well, 22350, which is the basic speed law, is misapplied because, the color of the clothes has nothing to do with, the basic speed law. I find that happening all the time on police reports. It's not that the police have bad intentions. It's, they don't understand the law, but there is a built-in bias that comes along with the police that I find when I'm talking to them a lot.
So it seems to me, Jim, like we shouldn't take the police report as just stated fact.
That's correct. A lot of times, as soon as they come to a crash or are writing up a report, the first thing that they do is they find that the cyclist is in violation of some vehicle code because they just don't really know what the law is. And I was giving you some of my examples of police reports that I've reviewed where they found that clothing color was used to assign fault because somebody was wearing dark clothes. And they said they were in violation of a vehicle code for the basic speed law for speed for what's safe. Again, what cyclist is wearing has nothing to do with the speed. The other thing that I found in police reports that comes about a lot is assuming that crosswalk riding is illegal. If somebody is going the opposite direction of traffic, but a crosswalk is not a roadway, and the police officers don't realize the difference. Pedestrians are walking in both directions. It's not a roadway, it's a crosswalk, and it's defined as a crosswalk. Police officers just don't realize that. They'll ticket and find a cyclist in violation of the vehicle code if they get hit by somebody, turning right or going straight and hitting them in a crosswalk. And if they're going the opposite direction, they'll find them as a primary collision factor, and that's just absolutely wrong. Another example is believing that cyclists must ride in the shoulder of a road. The law reads that a cyclist must ride as far to the right as practicable. But there are exceptions to that when you're passing another vehicle or you're making a left turn or trying to avoid a hazard in the road. But the most important one is when there's a substandard width of a lane. And that's very common here in California, where you have a lane that's just not wide enough for a cyclist to be able to ride further to the right without taking part of the lane. So taking part of the lane is perfectly legal. Police officers don't realize that. And again, when they come up on a crash or they see a cyclist riding toward the middle of the road, they'll give them a citation for it.
Taking the police report as not always factual, what other ways can cyclists or people who are riding bikes combat this kind of police bias or media bias?
The best way is for the cyclist to know what the law is. And if they are pulled over by a police officer, they can cite to a police officer the fact that, what they're doing is legal. In fact, if they're riding in a crosswalk, that crosswalk is not a roadway. If they're riding in a lane, that they're allowed to ride in the lane if the width of the lane is insufficient or they're passing another car. Being able to know what the law is, I think, is really important. If they get a police report, and it does have them as a primary collision factor or an associated factor, they can file a request for correction to that report. And I would highly suggest that if there is a police report that does find them in any way responsible, that they request a supplemental statement or request a factual correction of the police report. So they have that right to do that. And they would know that if they, hire a good, competent attorney.
They would know that also if they listened to Bike Talk,
That's
because
true.
you just told them.
That's true too.
And of course, what you always say is record what happens. Record what happens either on the bike, but also what happens afterwards. The driver says, "Oh, I didn't stop all the way," or something like that.
Exactly. If you have a cell phone, you just turn it, you can put it on video and just no matter where it's pointing, it's still recording. There's a lot of apps that you can put on your cell phone to start recording these type of things. But I think that's a really good thing to do. If you're in any kind of a crash or you're talking to the police officer or the people involved or any witnesses and you can record it, you don't necessarily have to tell them that you're recording it, but at least you have it recorded as to what they're saying. It's not like it's illegal to do that. You are allowed to have your phone on.
So it sounds like the main takeaway is know your rights.
You know your rights, okay?
Right.
There is something that, does go along with police bias, and that goes to, where they're writing citations. The studies that have been out and the statistics show that in minority areas, that there are more citations being written in those areas than others. So there is a slight, built-in bias, with regard to socioeconomic problems and in writing citations in certain areas that get more citations in the lower income areas, the areas of color, and others. That does pervade through, but most of the time, the police officers just don't know bicycle law.
Right. Well, Jim Pocrass, thanks again for coming on and explaining all that.
Thank you for having me, and I hope this helps everybody.
Absolutely. Jim Pocrass of Pocrass and De Los Reyes. One thing Jim mentioned as we stopped recording was another reason that a lot of the police reports are biased is because in a car bike crash, usually the biker is the one hurt and taken away in an ambulance. So the police report is often written by the driver and the police officer and not the cyclist who is sitting in the back of an ambulance on the way to the hospital.
And then the media reports whatever the police tell them.
So that's why I think maybe the police bias leads to the media bias, which leads, of course, to the public bias. We have one more interview with Josh Bowden of Adventure Cycling. He talks a little bit now about how to prep your body, how to get in shape for a long bike trip. So I'm back with Josh Bowden of Adventure Cycling. We've been talking about planning a long bicycle tour. We started off with, what's the reason that you're doing it? And then we went, what's the route and what time of year and, where do you want to go? And do you want to camp or stay in hotels? And all these different things came up. But one thing we haven't talked about is how do you get your body in shape? And me coming in at 60 plus, that's a real issue, I think. But I think it is for a lot of people. Josh, thanks so much for coming back on the show. I've really enjoyed meeting and getting to know you. And as Nick said, getting all this free information from you about touring. Welcome back to the show. And that's it. That's all I got.
Yeah, happy to be back. Always happy to talk about bikes. It's great that this gets to be something I do for work. Just get to talk about bike riding and helping people get out. It's pretty
Totally.
great.
Yeah. Well, so how do you physically plan for something like this?
Well, I guess first of all, to address like physically preparing on long trips, there's kind of a sentiment from some people of I'll get into shape as I go.
Right.
I'll go a little slow at the beginning. It'll be harder, and 2, 3 weeks in, yeah, you'll be in very good shape. I would say if you're planning on a long bike trip, odds are you like riding your bike, so might as well ride it more in your day-to-day life and think about it more closely so that when you start your trip, you're ready to go. You can enjoy it from the first hour instead of those first couple weeks being a bit of a struggle. So really the best time to start preparing is just now, even if you don't have something on the calendar, let's go ahead and get into shape right now. And I think the training part of it, that can sound intense, right? Like you think of a training plan, you think of just like everything's so rigid, but it doesn't have to be.
Right.
In order of priorities for training, I would say keep it fun, make it enjoyable. If it's going to be something you don't look forward to, you're not going to do it.
Right.
People's lives are busy, so squeezing in a 30-minute, 1 hour or more bike ride or some kind of workout can be hard. But there's ways to incorporate that in. But I would say more than anything, the most important part of the physical prep is making a plan. And that doesn't have to be a super detailed, every single piece is planned out. That could be as minimal as something saying like, I'm going to ride 5 hours a week. And let's make one ride on the weekend a bit longer than the other ones. Maybe 30 minutes to an hour in the morning or evening during the week. But on the weekend, I've got time. I'll go for like a 2 hour ride or something.
Right.
You can get as detailed as you want. For some people, kind of more like myself, I enjoy the day-to-day plan. I enjoy recording things and tracking it and seeing the progress and all that stuff. So, but any kind of plan is good. If you don't really know what you're shooting for, same with the bike trip. If you don't have a plan, you don't know where you're going, you don't know what you're doing, it's hard to kind of get progress and stay motivated. But if you have that goal of, 5 hours a week, or, I'm going to ride 3 days this week, something like that to
Right.
get it going.
Well, I like the idea of what you said at the beginning of just ride more,
Yep.
just, ride to the store, ride to your friend's house, ride wherever you're going, just ride more.
Exactly. Yeah, that's one of the easy ways to incorporate that more into your life of just baking that into your everyday life. If you have to commute to an office or a workspace, maybe think about riding your bike there, which
Right.
is great because, you want to make your riding as similar to touring as possible. So you will want to ride your bike loaded down.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead and put those panniers, go ahead and put those bags on your bike. So if you got to commute, you're probably bringing a change of clothes potentially, maybe a laptop or something like that. So there's a little bit of weight baked in there. And then you can easily, that's, 30 minutes, maybe an hour of writing a day that just kind of organically happens throughout your day.
Right. Right.
So that's a really great way to do that.
I think it's Bill Nye, the science guy, who says there's something wrong with the society of people who drive to the gym to ride their bike at the gym. And
Yes.
so, just ride to the gym, I guess, is the answer to that.
Yeah, if at all possible. I know in some places it's not quite great. I know LA is infamous for the so many cars and all the traffic and
Phew.
stuff, but surely there's a way to get around on a bike. I live in Missoula and I'm blessed to live somewhere where biking is extremely easy, very bike friendly. So it's not a problem here. But yes, driving to the gym to ride a bike, pretty silly.
Well, I also like the idea of, using your panniers to kind of fill those up sometimes. Because one of the
Yeah.
things I hate is when my heel hits my pannier,
Mm,
on every pedal stroke. And I
mhm.
think just getting used to that and, pushing it a little further back, or maybe I even need to get bigger toe clips so my foot can go more forward or something. But I love the idea of working with those as you're training.
Yeah, if you can make that bike riding as similar to what you're going to be doing when you're out there as possible, wear the same clothes, ride the same bike, use the same like panniers and gear that you're going to be using. It all goes into that. Now, like loading up your panniers with the gear you're going to be riding with, that can be time consuming, but I'd say,
Right.
every once in a while do it. It gives you good practice, and especially on a bike, that weight distribution of where the gear goes is important. But, if you're just trying to get some weight in there, you can fill up, those inexpensive, like, 3 gallon or 1 gallon, like bottles of water and just stick them
Oh,
in your panniers. And there's some weight. And then, if you can carry the heavy weight up that hill that you're climbing and then get to the top, dump the water out and get a nice lightweight ride back in. It's
right.
easily adjustable. And it's, after you buy the container, it's free.
Right.
So that's an easy way to add some weight to your stuff.
Oh, I like that
Um,
idea because the bike does handle differently with a lot of weight,
yes,
either on the
exactly.
back or if it's, hopefully it's proportioned properly in the front and the back. But
Yeah. Another thing to think about with training that on top of like making it fun being the most important, another thing is the consistency. It's not going
right,
to be good training if you're not riding during the week and then you do a 5 hour ride on the weekend. The consistency is where the progress is going to come in, doing those rides every day, every other day, and then like progressively going further. Maybe you're doing 5 hours for a few weeks, then you're going to increase to 6 hours and so forth and so on. In like the training world, that's called progressive overload. Essentially, you're progressively increasing, as things get easier, you're going to just do load more on top of that.
right, right.
So making sure, and that's part of the tracking, and that's why you want some minimal plans. So you're not wondering like, how much have I done? I don't really know what's going on. If you say, oh, I did 5 hours a week for 3 weeks in a row, I'm feeling good. Maybe we bump it up to 6 or 7. So that helps you with that preparation.
Oh, okay.
Um, and one thing to think about, especially with biking, is like off season and winter. So, although we said driving to the gym to ride a bike is silly, you can do that. There's indoor trainers, there are
Right,
stationary bikes at gyms. Maybe you ride your bike to the gym and then you ride the
right,
bike inside potentially, but those are great options just because anything to reduce that barrier to actually do it. If you're sitting there like agonizing over, like, gosh, I got to put all these clothes on, it's going to be so cold and miserable to ride, maybe it is a good idea just to get that gym membership and go do that right at the gym because doing it is better than not. So any way
right,
you can make that happen is the way to do it. There's also fun group classes if you're someone that wants the energy of other people around. It takes kind of also takes the burden off of you to make a route or design a workout. You just have someone do it for you, and then you have
right.
that fun energy. I mean, another thing, it's not exactly bike related, but the winter and off season is a great time to do some weightlifting. A lot of great just like health benefits for humans in general. But the way I always think of it is like weightlifting in the off season, that's building up the strength and muscle that you're gonna transform into that endurance and that ability to ride, long distances more easily. And weightlifting, for me, it's a bit intimidating, honestly, even though I've been an athlete all my life. I'm still kind of getting into that world. So that's a great place to kind of like the stationary bike. A group class is good. Talking most gyms, they'll do a like free consultation with a trainer is a very
Right,
common thing they offer.
right.
It doesn't have to be intense. You can just hire them to basically tell them what you're doing. I'm training for a bike thing. I want to do some weightlifting. They will work with you and then give you a workout that's designed for you
Right.
to make that easier to approach.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about upper body strength. I mean, I guess you can lift weight with your legs too, of course,
Mhm.
but I was wondering about, how much upper body strength do we want to prepare for something like this?
Definitely want some. I mean, think of times you've done a really long bike ride. It's not just, obviously your butt's getting sore on the saddle, your legs are getting tired because they're pedaling, but you're probably doing a lot of moving around because your hands get tired, or maybe your shoulders are tired because you're getting hunched over. So you definitely want to do some. Now, like when people think about weightlifting, I think a lot of people think of like getting huge. They think of Arnold Schwarzenegger
Right,
style
right,
people. They're getting massive. You don't have to do that. The science of weightlifting has come a long, long way in a short amount of time. So there's very clear scientific backed evidence of how to lift to avoid getting super big,
right,
like putting on tons of weight, if you don't want to do that, which for biking, we, don't want to exactly be carrying tons of
right.
muscle. So there's different ways to do that. And your local trainer that you can work with will help you figure that out. They'll help you avoid getting, the fancy term is hypertrophy. That's the term for building large muscle mass.
Oh,
You can
wow.
you can avoid that by lifting different ways.
Yeah, I've managed to avoid that my whole life.
I think a lot of us have. I've definitely avoided that in my life.
Yeah.
Um,
And
but
then how
even
about, oh, sorry, go ahead, please.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say like the weightlifting again, it's good to just do it, whatever that looks like. I would say like especially when I'm doing more training for biking or running, I don't want to be spending hours in the gym. I want to be spending my time running or biking. But something like 2 hours a week, two workouts. One way to make it very, very simple is doing kind of like your core body movements. So for upper body, that's a push movement and a pull movement. You use your arms to push and pull things. So do one workout for each. There's a hinge and a squat for lower legs, bending over like
Right,
you're picking up a box or like a heavy squat when you're kind of going straight down. Then a carry, when you're carrying heavy grocery bags or something like that, think
right.
of that. And then some core exercises. That's how I modeled my workouts in the past. They lasted about an hour. I kept them very simple and I only had to do 6 or 7 exercises. So keeping it as simple as possible, not trying to do too much, again
Right.
with the training, start somewhere that's very sustainable, very approachable. And then as you get into it, you'll probably want to do a little bit more. You'll get excited as the bike ride gets easier or those weights
Right.
get easier to lift.
Right. Yeah, I spoke with one woman who did a long bike tour, and she said by the end of it, she wasn't feeling good unless she was riding 4 or 5 hours a day. She just got so used to that, getting up, eating, biking, eating, going to bed. And she just got so used to that pattern that, she really was addicted to the 4 or 5 hours in the saddle every day.
Yeah, that's actually something that my boss and I had been discussing with our guided trips because we've had some people who do these long cross-country trips. We've had a few people reach out just saying that they're kind of having a hard time in everyday life after this is a very different topic, but
Right.
they're having a hard time just because yeah, they got used to that writing hours and hours a day. Now they're back in the everyday life. They're feeling anxious, they're feeling just a little bit depressed, like just
Yeah.
things feel a bit weird, and that's super common for what you're saying. There's a psychological component of that of on our trips, you're with a group of, 10 plus other people. That's all you're doing. Life is pretty simple. There's that camaraderie aspect, but there's a physical aspect of like when you're exercising, there's the chemicals being released by your
Right.
body that make you feel good. Think if you do a workout, you feel great afterwards, stuff like that. So when you go from having those endorphins and chemicals and other things flowing through your body for 6 plus hours a day to maybe zero,
Right.
and you're sitting at home, that can be kind of difficult to cope with. So I
Yeah.
think some of this physical preparation ahead of time, this is anecdotal, but that will probably help with that.
Right.
Instead of going from
Right.
0 to 6 hours, you're like, I'm in the routine. I'm used to a consistent level of this type of feeling in my everyday life.
Wow. Well, I guess the antidote to that would be do another bike tour.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. If that was the option, if I could just do bike tours back to back forever,
Right,
then we
right,
wouldn't have this problem.
right. Well, Josh, thanks a lot. That's I think really helpful. And for me, the big takeaway is just ride more. Just, make sure I'm on the bike, starting to do some long trips on the weekends or when I have time, 5, 6, 7 hours on the bike. But in general, just riding more and riding more in the form that I'm going to be riding on the tour. Maybe a pannier, maybe it's full of stuff, maybe I'm wearing the same kind of clothes. So that was really helpful. I want to end with this idea, a live Instagram interview with you where we take questions from people.
Yeah, I think a live Q&A would be good. I think I'm pretty good at how to talk about preparing for bike trips. I've done this, 4 or 5
Yeah,
episodes now, but I'm always missing a couple things, and people have specific concerns. So it really would be best to get those more specific questions. I try to
right,
keep things pretty general and broad here because it's trying to go to as many people as we can. But just like in your instance, we were using your trip as our example
right.
of like how to think about this. It'd be great to hear from people out there. What are they planning on? What are they concerned about? What do they have a question about? Because then we can get
Yeah.
those really great details for people.
And even what did they learn on their trip? If they did a cross
Yeah.
country trip, I'd love to hear some nuggets of advice from people who have done some great long distance trips. But I want to thank you for the time and effort that you've put into this. This has really been helpful for me. And from the people that I've spoken with, it's been helpful for them also. And very encouraging, which is really nice. Kind of knowing that you don't need to ride around the world tomorrow. You just start with what you have and do whatever you can and build from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and appreciate you giving us me the space and time to talk about the stuff. I mean, that's why I work at Adventure Cycling. I just love getting people outside. I love getting people on bikes. I've done trips before, and they've been really important in my life and shaped who I am. So, just getting more people out there is the best. And yes, it's not. It can be intimidating. It can be scary, but the barrier to entry can be quite low. So, definitely want to help as many people do that as possible.
In fact, we just did an interview, I don't know if you heard it, with Mary Boone, who wrote a book about the first woman to ride her bike around the world in 1895. And she
Whoa.
did it in a full long dress and a hat, and very different world then.
Yeah, if she can ride around the world wearing that, which sounds not very breathable or comfortable on a bike, I think we can manage it with our fancy Lycra and our specially made equipment. I think we can do it.
Exactly. Josh Bowden from Adventure Cycling, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Taylor. Appreciate it.
We are going to do an Instagram live event with Adventure Cycling on Tuesday, December 16th at 4 p.m. Pacific time, which is 5 p.m. Mountain Time, 6 p.m. Central Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. But that's going to be a live question and answer opportunity with Adventure Cycling, and also an opportunity for you to share your stories about bike touring with the Instagram live audience. So that's going to be an Instagram live on December 16th at 4 p.m. on the West Coast.
Wow, this is like when you had to sit down at 8 o'clock on Thursday to watch your favorite show.
Appointment viewing.
Appointment viewing, right? I knew there was an industry term. They should know our Instagram, right? Bike talking and adventure cycling is adventure cycling.
I don't know what it
Yes.
is, but I will get it, and we will talk about it in the next couple of shows too. I'll mention it each show, but I don't know what Adventure Cycling Instagram is.
We'll put the link in the show notes at biketalk.org.
Perfect.
Good show.
We want to thank our guests, Elly Blue and Summer Jewel Keown, and Rebecca Riley and Jim Pocrass and Josh Bowden. And of course, we want to thank our regulars, Julie Richard, Josh Hagland, Amy Ziering, Stacy Randecker, Lindsay Sturman, Charlie Lighthizer, and Kevin Burton.
Yes. And our quote?
We've been talking so much about trying not to alienate different parts of our audience as we talk about is biking a left, right, or a red, blue sort of issue. And it made me think of the famous Michael Jordan quote of Republicans buy sneakers too. And I think that Republicans ride bikes too. Do we want to emulate Republicans buy sneakers too?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, do we want to say that bikes are a left-right issue?
Well, no, I don't think we do. I think we want to say bikes are not a left-right issue.
Because Republicans buy bikes too.
Right. But it always makes me think of Muhammad Ali, who would have, I think, taken a different stance. He gave up 3 years of his career because he did not believe in serving in the military during the Vietnam War. He said, no Viet Cong has ever called me the N-word.
maybe we should emulate Muhammad Ali and stop paying federal taxes until they restart services. And
Yeah, I think he paid a fair amount of federal tax. I don't know, but
oh, right. I was thinking of Thoreau.
oh yeah, that was Thoreau.
He was cool too.
Yeah. So something to think about. How about that? My mom used to say, put that in your pipe and smoke it.
Well, that's a whole nother topic.
We got to end this.
It's getting too philosophical. Thanks, Taylor.
Ride safe.
This episode of Bike Talk is sponsored by the law offices of Pocrass and De Los Reyes, with offices in Los Angeles and Bakersfield and serving all of Southern California.
Bike Talk is a project of CRSP and the Los Angeles Eco-Village Institute. And that was Bike Talk. If you have a story, a tip, or a topic, head over to biketalk.org and send us a message. Talk again next week.
Push on a pedal, get your heart started. Push on a pedal, push it down and up again. Push on a pedal, get your heart started. Push on a pedal, push it down and up again. Get on your bike, sit on the seat, push your feet on the pedals, and ride it all around, ride it all around. Get on your bike, sit on the seat, push your feet on the pedals, and ride it all around, ride it all around. Ride my bike today, it keeps me fit, gets me there. I won't go stinking up the air, leave behind the daily grind. Now let your mind unwind, live its life, pretend to life. Better get yourself a bike. Get on your bike, sit on the seat, put your feet on the pedal, and ride it all around, ride it all around. Get on your bike, sit on the seat, put your feet on the pedal, and ride it all around, ride it all around. Get that car out of my way, I wanna ride my bike today. It keeps me fit, gets me there, I won't go stinking up the air, leave behind the daily grind. Now let your mind unwind, live its life, pretend to life. Better get yourself a bike. Got yourself a bike. Oh, 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 got yourself a bike.